Diabetes right into the skin.
Uh,
But like or Ozempic.
Right.
oh, I forgot to do this. Let me pull out my beginning of my needle. So,
Same guy where
Hey,
we.
and after I lost it, right, and I was like, did you double triple check it? And he's, it's right. I'm like, he said, then maybe to my home, well, you don't get it. No, it's fine.
Okay, well,
Well, I won multiple times, but I want to get rid of it.
right.
Well, nobody knows. It's gonna be a big.
well, we have Rachel. I hate to tell you, we're not sitting in here for 2 hours, you know, for that. We'll tell you how to do it. You've had closings, right? Ashley will be happy to sit with you for an hour and a half and explain how closings work.
I can go my listing anyway, of course, we moved them. It is about to go live, right? We moved the trash cans, I find out the front porch is rotten,
I don't know.
so now,
The spindles on it.
Never put this trash can right back.
well, the whole damn thing really needs. Well, thank you, sir.
No, it was not yet.
The whole thing, on that house.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Double
That's the only wood that's on it, or the post.
tall,
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Is that,
yeah.
well, the eaves on this house are so short that,
Gutters falling off,
I can click my
dang it. That's not what I mean.
A lot of new.
It was a part of people last year.
Yeah, it was fun.
I won last year's. Cause you didn't.
I think we did
drive your
2%.
license. Yeah, I think it was.
It wasn't like.
Having all the problems.
We did one last year, but it wasn't like this, we did a,
No, you did, it was,
yeah, we did.
it was
it
all.
wasn't like this.
It went.
No, I remember sitting up there.
I did too, but it was different. We did it last year and it wasn't as much fun as it was.
You got the same thing on that?
Maybe I was in the one the year before.
Yeah.
It was fun.
I don't think we did one last.
Yeah, we didn't do one last year. It was 2 years ago.
I think last year, cause I got licensed in December the year before that.
We had one last year, but it was not the same forum. It was not, it was different. I think you did some sort of what to expect in a closing or something like that, but it was not like this.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't make it more fun.
Yeah,
Apologize.
not what I meant to say.
So I'm the
But it's what you're thinking.
No.
representing the seller today. Then we can speak in Spanish.
Lovely. Yeah, I just got asked by Enrique, do they teach Spanish and on the bold in Spanish? I'm like, oh God, you know,
No.
yeah, they don't, because you have to have like, huh? They do?
I'm not. They do very fine.
Fair enough. You have to be able to get like 100 people signed up. 80 people have to. I know you're not gonna help whatsoever, so. Yeah, let's just define that.
Probably pronounced that's on my desk, that's not yours?
Oh,
It was on the floor in our office when I came in every week and I just figured it out.
somebody said an hour printer and used up already.
It's just. Well, there we go.
This is like, is it 10:30 yet, 9:30 yet?
I was gonna say, Ashley probably knows a little bit about the funding process as well.
About like, what little feeling here?
No, so.
Well, because we.
She's not.
The last one wasn't, she goes, oh, I'll watch that.
Yes.
He might be better just to.
Closing has been delayed.
We're just waiting.
And we're waiting on each other, whatever.
We, was it one time? It may have been the one, this one. They had paid, they'd written a check to pay something. And then they stopped paying on the check like that morning, thinking that they wouldn't get caught. And you guys caught it.
I don't remember.
I remember
I
that.
do remember
That was
your flyer that said ACH instead of. Yeah,
Oh, that was mine.
yeah.
My sister had. I'll just get your money. Like we did it. I was like, please, I'll just get your money.
Like anybody, does anyone have $200,000? Just
Jackie, we need $20,000, $30,000. I'll give it to her.
It's a lot.
That wasn't my favorite.
I think it was like a.
No.
Six figure.
No,
I could probably reach out.
there's a house you bought.
Yeah.
Yeah, they may be better than 60.
I thought it was like 200.
No,
No.
she didn't have that much money at the time. She's.
Vaccine program is good. Really? Vaccine.
Oh, that's fine.
She thinks this very. Yeah.
Yes, one day. She's a true German.
Yeah.
Well, that happened to my daughter too, with her dad.
I got right.
That was a rough
Oh,
time.
really? You also love the camera.
I know, the kids are bad. I know, so you'll see more.
Yeah.
Thank you. They wanted people and people there. They told us we didn't have it.
No.
Oh, my God, I'm interrupting.
That's everything I want.
I don't know. I don't know.
Mega fan. Oh, I'm just not happy with my age. No, there's no reason, then you can call him back.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, she did, or I was like, I work. She's like, why are you there too? And I'm like, his name's all over the stories. So it's funny, I'm like, shoot, there goes my mother. So, yeah, she's a cool, she had great. I'm not. Yeah.
She did her previous agent stuff.
Yeah. I'm like, so what's from her?
That's great.
Yeah, she's, I feel like my work, I don't have that.
I'm in mine.
When I first met.
Yeah.
I just all read the love it. Hey, if I'm going down, I'm speaking in your.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, she had trouble.
That is really funny. She seems like a tough girl. She loves to.
Drug nuts.
That tough
I'll take it.
Yes.
No, people are calling me back. She doesn't-
Are you going through separation?
Wait.
Monday, yeah, it's like
She walked in the office and she yelled at me, and I said, oh, you got to wait, call me back from 2 days ago.
Well,
There's no Monday.
Yeah, there was, no, it was Tuesday.
it's like.
Catch your butt.
It was still 2 days ago.
No.
Oh, you too, then that's. No, I did, I can't get away with it. So, he,
Like better than separate week, I'm out.
he did text either me or Brian about.
Yeah, the first season's got an ice battle right now.
Finally,
So-
Gary asked her to do
I twisted it and I. Twisted it and I printed it out for that. Yesterday. Twisted it, did, and just.
Whatever that day was.
I know, I mean, I did cardio yesterday and today, I don't know if I should have done it because I'm hurting more.
But anyway, so he's the guy that.
Yeah, if you have a problem with your back, I need to correct it.
Yeah, I was right. I think, well, you know, the old thing, I was leaning against the wall. That's why I was leaning against the wall.
I am like.
Time to, I thank him for coming.
I have me.
The day after they've been out. All right, so she did, how do we wanna do Friday? We're gonna need strength.
maybe, we can all do like.
You're in charge.
That's Georgia.
It's not that either. There we go.
It's not frozen. It's just red.
Just red.
I'll give you a 20% commission.
If you pressure come back,
You bet.
you don't need to know about closing, you already know about it, because you've got no permission, so. What do you even?
Every closing's different.
First of all, why are you people sitting all the way back there? This isn't about
I
the
swear
service.
to God.
Got my name targeted. I get attention.
Probably does, I don't doubt that. You probably stuck gum under the table.
Get out your hand.
That's.
I'm blaming that.
I get all down for that. Middle people, get the middle people.
I'm coming.
Don't come over.
Right up.
Here, it's in-
There you go.
Oh, my God. Black professionalism.
I'm learning from the best.
He's doing that.
Yes, he is.
Am I the only little piggy in here?
No, I really, I live in a friend of a friend. Look at it.
Calories don't come under free. Stuff really good.
Is that true?
Good.
So you ate one?
Well, do y'all have any questions? I'm looking at the small group. What? Small intimate group. Thanks. But y'all have questions on closing settlement statements? Anything weird happened in closing?
This is not normally how the.
No.
Since-
Normally, it's very little house.
Yeah, I mean, between the three of us, we probably have, we've done like close to 1,700.
That's the thing, you guys are all probably more experienced in my view.
This is from a
It's like-
logistic.
Just give like. Tell us, like, hey, this is, these are like the top things that I always look for.
Unfortunately, I've
From
never.
a logistics perspective, don't ever schedule anything else on the day of a closing.
So,
Because because 75% of the time, there will be some fire drill that you have to run across the hall and say, hey, I need such and such, or
Okay.
they haven't gotten something in yet. It just makes your life a lot easier, and always tell your client, do not take the day off from work,
Okay,
don't schedule anything. You wanna have everyone in flexible mode,
yeah,
I guess.
flexible.
I have one right now that was supposed to close last Thursday, and then it was to close Tuesday. And now we'll be lucky, and we did, fortunately, we had extended it. And said that we'd close on or before the 11th, because we were waiting for a survey to come back. Well, the survey came back, but they didn't record the change on it. So it ended up being pushed back, and now we'll be lucky if we don't have to write another extension to close after the 11th. So, yeah, don't plan your day around.
Yeah,
Vacations around it either, like.
Yeah.
You just-
No, that's what he's. That's what we're like, yeah.
And if you have to make a change to closing, always try to have an amendment done.
Yeah.
Instead of doing a unilateral,
Oh, yeah.
because you can always
Yeah.
keep the unilateral in your
Save it.
pocket.
Yeah, because once you use it,
Yeah.
that's ticket.
I
So
would just,
one time-
my last closing, not that I've had many, but I would say was a doozy, where we got that from us and the closings kept getting rescheduled, so. I did, maybe I do have this question, I did have my seller because she was getting stressed out, and obviously I don't wanna portray that experience. She was getting stressed out because the closing was getting pushed. Long story short, I said, because we didn't use either law firm here, which obviously, I always push forward anyways. That law firm did say, listen, I have her paperwork ready if she wants to come in and sign. So I did encourage her to go in and sign because she was off that day anyways to do it.
Yeah.
So I just didn't know, I'm like, I did that, we didn't, and then obviously the buyer signed days later. But that's what you.
There's nothing wrong with
Yeah.
that.
I did it, but I was like,
It's okay, the
Yeah.
attorney's okay with it,
yeah, I just wanted that aspect. I'm like,
Yeah.
make sure your seller understands that they're not getting paid until. the
yeah,
closing
and she
is
did, I was
done.
like, and you may not, this may not happen, but we're gonna force.
What was the challenge on the buyer side?
The lender, so basically it was a situation where the loan wasn't horrible lender, and obviously I know from now, even more now, but what I realize is you don't really know until you're in it and they're not communicating with you. Cause I talked to her even before we accepted the offer and it all sounded
Yeah.
great. until we got into it. Talk about taking vacations, that one loan officer took a vacation when we were supposed to close, she was in Italy, it was a mess. Anyways, so glad we did end up closing, but what happened is the loan officer did something. She was short like $2,500 to actually close. The buyer was, it was all, I don't know what was going on. I just told my seller, we aren't doing anything wrong, this is on their end. Overall, what ended up happening is that loan officers had to sacrifice her commission to make that work. And I was just happy to hear.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not doing wrong.
Yeah. You didn't do anything wrong.
Appraisal works, since the appraisal works out, you could increase the purchase price.
And we were gonna consider that. See, the only thing is my seller, and I even recommended the buyer's agent do a decrease in his commission, because how it was gonna work was they wanted very long story, but they wanted my seller to come down in the purchase price or somehow sign an amendment, but have the buyer would sell her money to make up for that.
Oh.
No, it was getting so, and I thought.
Normally, the
loan officer.
Oh.
Yeah, I was like, I'm like, do you think I'm gonna bring that?
Closing,
Yeah.
or vice versa.
Maybe. And I was on the phone and driving, I was showing of another buyer property and I'm like, listen, I can't believe you even, I'm like, there's no way of bringing that up to the seller. I wouldn't even do that. Anyway,
I like my license.
I learned
Yeah.
Thank you.
On top of that, what's to enforce that? What if the buyer just like, never mind,
I,
you have nothing in the.
that was the moment where I'm like, I didn't tell my seller that, but that was a moment in my stomach where I'm like, I don't know if this is gonna work. I'm gonna stay cool because I don't have all the facts on that side. So I called the agent, the buyer's agent. Anyways, it ended up working out.
Well, you can
And it
also,
seemed legal. Everything was legal at the law. So I'm like, as long as this is all good. I'm
also,
good.
if the buyer really wants the property and your seller really wants to sell it to them, you can always say, listen, if your buyer wants this to go through, we're gonna have to change lenders.
Well, and we were gonna go that route, but my seller was getting to the point where she was like, we need to move.
Yes.
So anyways, it worked out, and I just wanted it to be,
Yeah.
but it was interesting, I felt, for being a new realtor, I felt experienced.
Yeah, did you reach out to anyone for help during that time, or did you just?
I did, Enrique, I mean,
Okay. so
Enrique
you're in
was a
PC.
big help, but I also went with my gut, but yes, I'm in PC.
Okay, all right,
For
good.
that.
Yeah, and that's another reason to encourage people to be in PC, because you do have someone. And even if Enrique is always, if he's ever on vacation or you need anything, you can reach out to any
Yeah.
agency member and we will help you through
Yeah.
that situation. And if it's something that I don't know the answer to, I'm gonna say, you know what, that's a great question.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I mean, we had, Enrique was in Peru last week, and that's how it.
Come to do it.
Happy to help all the time.
Yeah,
I don't know how
yeah.
good he is. And he's not the best agent.
Yeah, when it came-
Obviously, if
when
you
it
look at.
So situation like,
I would know.
Say the least.
No, the mock closing is supposed to be fun.
I will say with sellers signing early, one thing to be on the lookout for is numbers can change. It's always like to preface seller signing early. If there is a change in like the closing date, that'll change your prorations.
Right.
So just be
Yeah.
kind of near a computer so we can send you updated numbers so you can approve them. Because we can't just like willy-nilly change the numbers without.
and they
their
have to order that before they close.
Correct, yes, and so like lenders will have documents sometimes too. So if it's like an FHA or a VA loan, there's almost always something for the seller to sign. And if it's moving because of a lender issue, we won't have the package for them to be able to sign it. So there might be additional activities for them to do later, but if it eases their mind to go ahead and sign, it's always fine to do that. As long as we have like all the relevant pieces, like if you're missing a payoff and an HOA closing letter and that's why they're not ready, doesn't make a lot of sense for a seller to go ahead and sign. But a lender issue, it's fine, as long as they understand, they'll have to do things more work later. Mhm.
So probably in closings, the biggest, and you guys are trying to, the biggest, I won't say obstacles, but challenges that you have when you go from a closing. let's start off with on the seller side is making sure that when you do the contract that you get, if there's an HOA, a community association disclosure done. That's what they need to be able to get the HOA letter. HOA letters, you don't just send it in two and get it back and forth. And actually, I have literally had to stand on top of someone's desk to get a report, to be able to do that. So that's something you want out as fast as you can, to have that time to be able to do it. The other part of it is looking at what the special stipulations are in there. If there's documentation such as survey that you're talking about, or for them to have time to be able to do their title search. Because that's one of y'all's main jobs is to make sure you have clear title moving from one side, to the other side.
Although with the JV, technically the JV is running it clear the title.
Oh, it is? I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's the purpose of the JV, is to run and clear the title. So it's still like a Kelly trained people that's doing it, but it's a separate set of people.
Right.
Whereas without the JV, it's like my team is running and doing it, now the JV is running and clearing the title, and then we use that in our closing.
Okay. What are some other things from the seller agent point of view heading toward a closing that can create hiccup?
I have one. If the seller is a company, LLC, corporation, whatever it is, you have to collect the paperwork upfront, like at your listing appointment. No, go in the tax record before your listing appointment or GSC, CCA, make sure you know exactly who the seller is.
Or ask me to pull the deed. I'm happy to do that.
Right, and then when you're at the listing appointment, you collect the operating agreement and whatever other pertinent information for a company is, because the attorney will need that to see who, and you need it too, to see who is authorized to sign that contract.
Okay, and then to add on to that, if it is an LLC, the seller is an LLC, when they receive their proceeds, it can't go like if I say, oh, well, it's AB Edwards Real Estate LLC. And then I can't just go in and say, oh, I want a check made out to me.
That's correct.
So you better make sure it wasn't. So you better make sure upfront that they have a bank account that they're having the money put into in the name that the LLC or the trust or whatever it is.
What I was thinking is you said LLC, but I was thinking trust documents, if you know that they just got divorced, right? Any of those papers, you need to get those.
Anything outside of a single or married couple, there's another set, like if it's LLC or corporations, articles of incorporation, operating agreement.
Yeah, so for an LLC, we need the operating agreement. The rest of the document, if it's a Georgia LLC, I can pull the rest of the documents because they're on the Secretary of State. If it's a different state, some states make you pay for it. If it's a state where it's free, I don't mind pulling it. If it's paid for, then your seller's gonna have to provide us with essentially proof that the company is active and in good state. Different states call it different things. If it's a corporation, then we need bylaws. So bylaws and operating agreement have the same function. They say how the company is structured and who's authorized to sign.
We had a deal, it was on the commercial side earlier this year, where it was an LLC. And there were basically 4 different entities that were members of the LLC. It was a general operating partner, if it's signed, we had to pay for it. It was all done correctly. But the question that they asked was, well, closing, because we're gonna be closing out this LLC, because that was the only property in it. Can you just write, 4 checks out to us with all 25% ownership? And the answer is no. It still has to go to the operating account, and then the general partner then splits the proceeds out from there.
Well, I've had situations where there has been a resolution signed by everybody where but it has to be cleared by title, like title company has to agree.
Yeah.
I would never suggest that. I think there's only maybe been like one closing that I've ever done where we were able to give proceeds to not the entity on title. So I wouldn't say like, oh, if you just get a resolution, you'll be fine. If they have it, then the response is, let's send it over to see if we can use it.
Right.
The chance of us being able to use it is pretty low. I'm not gonna say 0, but pretty low. So like the rule of thumb I use is whatever name is on title is who needs to get the proceeds. The only kind of exception to that would be an estate. So like if Ashley Connor is on title and Ashley is dead, then we need to send it to Ashley Connor's estate, not Ashley Connor. But it does have to go to the estate, even if I have exactly one heir and they're gonna get everything, it can't go to the heir, it has to go to the estate.
Because
So
the
it's
state
urgent.
has its own EIN number with the
It
IRS.
should, but it
So
won't,
if
if,
they 90% of the time, they have not done any of that work, they've not.
Yeah.
EIN, they don't have a bank account.
typically they don't get the EIN until they apply for the bank account, because nothing prompts them to get that tax ID until they try to go open a bank account, at which point the bank will say, you need a tax ID to open it, and then they go get it. So it's a great idea at your listing appointments, if you have a non-individual seller, like company, estate, trust, to say, do you have a bank account set up in this name? If they say no, encourage them to do it, because if, most people want to wire, because then it's easy access to the funds. If you don't have an account, obviously can't wire to an account that doesn't exist. But even if I cut a check, you're not gonna be able to do anything with the check until you open the account. So either way, they're not gonna have access to that money until they have that account open.
Yeah. Now, you have two, like we just did a deal on some land that was two brothers who owned it, and checks were cut, it was split evenly between the two of them. And checks were cut individually too, because there was nothing there.
But there was nothing individual.
Yeah, we're
trying
to do it. Yeah.
I have one right now that's.
Split proceeds between sellers however they want. So like if Lindsay and I own property and I think she should get all the proceeds, that's fine, because she's one of the sellers on title. So we can split it up between ourselves however we want. Now, if there's divorce paperwork that says 50-50, then that's really what we should do. But if both parties say, don't worry about it, we'll do 60-40, that's fine.
Yes.
I wouldn't encourage that, but like, we're not gonna try to overrule an agreement by the parties.
If it's contentious divorce, just make sure it's right. Because neither was not supposed to take one to translate or divorce, so you can't even be in the same room or have the same office on the same day. That's one of those.
Or in the parking lot, very close to each other.
Yeah, I've also had, particularly if you work with investors, that's when the LLCs and corporations and stuff come in. When you ask for the documentation, actually go through it. Because sometimes there's an LLC inside an LLC inside an LLC. So you might have to collect multiple operating agreements until you get to the right person who can sign. So always make sure you look at the signature page and see who the manager or the authorized person to sign is. Because again, just collect your paperwork upfront.
And if you are listing, like we have a perfect example of this right now, I have a listing and we did a title search early on because I wanted to make sure that the acreage on it was correct. And so I put in the listing that we would prefer to use, of course, Kelly and Ashley. Well, this buyer's agent had an an attorney that she used for everything. So actually I had a few conversations about him. Most unprofessional attorney I've ever met in my entire life. Called me, yelling at me. Yeah, it has been ugly. It's so ugly that the buyer's agent said, this is last transaction with you, we're done, never will use them again. And that's the transaction that right now is being held up because everything was not done properly. If Ashley.
Who's that attorney? So
And
whenever you,
CJ Spraggins.
what?
CJ Spraggins. Yeah, and I heard him on the phone, I said, whoa, buddy, I said, listen, I said, if I ever, I said, I did, I said, I have never had a closing with you, this is the only closing I'll ever have with you, I said, and rest assured, that if a piece of paper, an offer, a contract ever comes across my desk with your name on it, I will make sure that that is changed, I will never have another closing with you again, and if your name ever comes up, I will let everyone else know not to have closing with you, it was that ugly. It was that bad.
Yeah, that's bad.
So if there's a reason that you really want to use someone, push. I wish I had pushed harder. She was just such a nice agent. We become big buddies. I really like her. But we would have closed over a week ago had it been with them because they had already picked up on what was wrong.
That's what I'm thinking. I take away, I think each week that I'm here is how valuable your relationships are.
Oh, yeah, there's no question about it.
And having experience myself hearing that, it's just, right, fighting for it, why not?
Absolutely. If there's one thing I could do over again, it'd be that.
Yeah.
a lot of other things, but.
That's right.
Yeah, because I mean, we were, at one point, I called Ashley, I'm like, she said, well, you know, you can't switch it over to us, and I'm like, well, if it doesn't close Tuesday, well, here we are. So, anyway,
Well, good luck.
but yeah, so, but make sure, I mean, if your gut's telling you go with the person, then go with the person.
And to that, nobody will lose a closing or a contract for the closing. I mean, we always want to close with them, even on my listings, I always put there, must close with the Kelly and Sorga. And most people don't even question it, they're like, oh, okay. And if they actually call and say, well, why? You know, because sometimes you will have agents ask why. I was telling, well, you know, they closed with them before, which is the truth. Most of my clients have closed with them before. They've closed with them before and they already know that, or they've already run title. Like if you ask them for the deed, say they've already done paperwork on the transaction, and then nobody's gonna question.
Well, and yeah, but this was, and you will have, you know, and that was kind of, this was the situation, and she uses her guy for everything, just like I use them for everything. And so he has been her guy, she's been in real estate for 5 years, and he's done every.
Has she ever had another issue?
She had some leading up to it, and this was, yeah, yeah. So,
Okay, on the seller
What
side, I
else?
would also suggest, make sure that the day of closing, you instruct your sellers for a couple of things. One is to bring 2 types of ID, and it has to be government issued, like their license.
Unexpired.
Passport, license, their car insurance,
Their license to carry, yeah, they're gun.
Yeah.
license to carry, anything that's government issued.
yeah, federal ID, you know, I mean, just an ID, because
The insurance paperwork is not, does not have a picture, but yet it's valid.
They can't bring that alone. We have to have a
Oh, so that's a
government issued
compliment.
photo ID. Yeah, and so the reason that Michelle's saying bring 2 is sometimes lenders will want double verification. Or sometimes, you know, a lot of cultures have multiple last names and different last names will be shown on different paperwork. So like if it says, you know, in our example, Lindsay Zapata here, but really her ID is Lindsay Zapata Martinez, then if just your ID has Zapata, but you have the insurance paperwork that shows Martinez, then we can link that together, it's fine.
Okay.
So that kind of thing happens.
You know, I've really ever had challenges on ID.
Oh, that's a daily occurrence.
Really?
People will show up with no ID, and I'm like, really?
See, I always, the day of closing,
It's fine.
Yeah.
what I have a tendency to do is the day of closing in the morning, I'll text the client, you know, or the buyer and say, or seller, and I say, hey, happy closing day, we'll see you at 1 o'clock. Remember to bring your ID with you.
Yeah.
I always say that. See, I always say, I bet you in 700 transactions, maybe 2 times someone's asked for 2 IDs.
Same for me, but one time, the seller didn't have it, he only had 1, and we had to scrub, that's when I learned about.
And that was only on the buyer's side.
Insurance.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think for buyers, that's almost more important, because the reason we.
Yeah, I had it out on the buyer's side, never the seller's.
Yeah, so the lender has a document, a Patriot Act document, where essentially we're saying we verified this person's identity, and sometimes they want 2 IDs. Now, their homeowner's insurance, that counts, so every loan is gonna have homeowner's insurance on it, but sometimes that policy only lists one of the 2 buyers. It really should have both,
Yeah.
but I can't use it for the second buyer if the second buyer is not on there. So having that second form of ID is sometimes required on the lender side. So it's a great policy to just tell everyone to bring 2 copies of ID, of current ID, because a lot of times we get people who show up with expired licenses, because they just don't pay attention to when their license expires. They don't look at it that much. Other people
Yeah.
look at it, but people don't look at their own license. So they'll show up with an expired ID, which is one of the reasons why we ask for it early. So A, we can make sure everything's spelled right, but B, we can make sure it's not expired. Because if you show me an expired license 15 days before closing, you have time to go apply for a new one and at least you give me your temporary one when you show up. But if we don't know till the morning of, then that's bit more difficult.
And for records, okay, this is really a post-closing thing, but since we're talking about IDs, we had a situation where we helped the buyer buy a property, and he became a citizen after that and changed his name, dropped his second last name. So when he went to sell it, his name didn't match the original name. His driver's license was new, so he didn't have any documentation that had his second last name, so we couldn't really prove. But Luis is great at keeping a file this big on all his documents, so he's like, let me pull my file. He pulled his file, and he had a copy of the old driver's license
Wow.
with the two last names, and we were able to provide that, and we were able to close. So what to keep after a closing? Keep a copy of the settlement statement, keep a copy of the full contract, keep a copy of the driver's license, whatever ID was used for that particular transaction.
And then another good idea, which I don't know that a lot of people do this, but it would be a good idea to have, is if you represented the buyer, ask for a copy of the title insurance policy, because if you help them sell and there's an issue, they may or may not remember where that policy is, but if you can say, oh, I have that for you, then that could end up being helpful. You're not gonna need it a lot, but, you know, and to get that, the buyer could give you a copy, or the buyer could tell the attorney that they want you to have a copy. That's not something that we would traditionally just give out to other people. That's more of our kind of private documents, but if the buyer wants you to have a copy, we can send it, or they can send it to you, but
And
that
we
could
can
be
get an
helpful.
electronic copy, like I don't want a paper copy, but.
Yeah,
I'll get an electronic
Yeah,
copy.
of course. Yeah, because to clear title, like if an issue comes up.
Yeah, see?
Yeah.
To get a copy, but now I will.
Yeah, because if you help them sell it and something comes up, then
And
you're good to go.
talking about that, I just had a closing where the closing attorney didn't give the copy of the title insurance policy at closing, like, my buyer barely got a settlement statement. And, well, no, I asked him, I'm like, does he have a copy of the title insurance policy? Oh, well, I have to print that separately. I'm like, well, we can wait for you.
Yeah.
I have worked for law firms where they do the policies, when they do the recording of the deeds, so like those are the policies. You know,
And how do they do it for mine?
I mean, that's not our policy, but I know that there are people that.
Right, but then
That used to be title
like,
insurance
like,
company
forget,
standard.
the agents
Upgraded
forget.
to standard.
Yeah.
I would forget.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not gonna be thinking about that
No.
anymore. I want it like right there, anyway.
Yeah, every now and then, sometimes they do have to get mailed, but that's because like there's a glitch in the system and like we can't access the portal to be able to print it. Or I think all of the open door files, they get mailed, so heads up on open door. And like with,
Run into the world.
No, wait.
Yeah, just curious.
we've done, but
Yeah, I don't give your name or often take that face.
I haven't been offered that.
Yeah.
But I don't know that they push everything my way. I think they've got a different firm.
I just don't need your.
Why don't we go through the.
Okay,
Yeah, because I need to know what I'm paying for.
So we're back into roll.
Yeah.
Entertaining.
Yeah.
all right, so Allison is our buyer, Lindsay is our seller. So I always like to go through the buyer side first, mainly because they more often than not have a lot more to sign than the seller has to sign. So you are gonna be on the right-hand side, left column is charges, right column is credit back. You're being charged with the sales price of property. You're getting credit for your $25,000 earnest money deposit, credit for your $1,000 option money, credit for your loan amount, and then the credit from the seller.
Okay.
For the prorations and adjustments, you're essentially gonna reimburse the seller for things that they've already paid, but you'll own the property. So the rest,
She already paid what I paid in.
well, you don't have to pay again, you're reimbursing her, because she's already paid it. So you each paid for the portion of the year that you own the property.
Nothing's free.
Well, I don't understand why I paid it if you've already paid it. I mean,
So Lindsay's paid the full calendar year, 365
Good for
days,
her.
but after today, you own, so
Right.
you're paying her your portion of the year. So you each only come out of pocket the part of the year that you owned the property.
It's smart to give them money.
Imagine showing for property.
Also credit for HOA dues for the rest of the year for the exact same reason. She's paid the full year. You're given the portion of the year that you own the property. Also, the reason you're doing that is because that's what your contract says. So you pre-agreed to do that.
There's a contract? Okay.
Yeah, we started that at the Alexander.
Oh.
Good hearing.
That's all.
Yeah.
Anybody had to be up nine? I honestly had to do that one time.
Wow, I know.
I was drunk all the time, filling house in Virginia Highlands. And I told them, yeah, I'm picking you up at 8:45, and I literally drove them to the closing to make sure he was lucid. Yeah, sober, lucid.
All right, so credit for the rest of the year solid waste. And then solid waste is actually paid a year in advance in Gwinnett County. So the 2023 tax bill includes the 2024 solid waste. So
Okay.
since Lindsay's paying the full 2023 tax bill, that includes next year's solid waste. So you're just reimbursing her for that.
Okay, so then I won't have one next year.
Well, in your 2024 tax bill, it'll have the 2025 solid waste.
No.
So it's, yeah, I don't know why they do it like that, but they do.
This is true, this is true.
Yeah.
Next section, we've got
This.
So those are the commissions, that's what the seller's paying, you don't have to worry about that. But it's for your agent.
Damn.
Sure, we can put you in a store and,
So your lender's got an origination fee, an underwriting fee, an appraisal fee, and a credit report fee, all fairly standard lender fees. This prepaid interest is the interest that gets you through the end of September. Your October payment will be due November 1st. So first mortgage payment is November 1st.
Okay. Alright, so this is one on furniture, this one.
Next, three, make up the starting balance of your escrow account. Have you had an escrow account before?
What's that?
So it's where you pay in money with your mortgage every month, so your lender can pay for your property taxes and your homeowner's insurance.
Pay for that.
With your money.
Oh.
Yeah. But it's nice with this one less thing, or two less things you have to worry.
Well, I guess I do the houses in. So
You
it's
don't
okay.
get a house, and you don't have to worry about paying the property tax. And
That's good, that is
Yeah.
helpful, because sometimes, yeah, well, out stuff, like I forgot what's on that contract.
no, you signed the contract. We wouldn't be here if we had signed.
Okay, I just forgot.
Before we move on from the first page, you did bring the earnest money check, right?
Yes, I've already did it. So we're good on that. So.
Always remember to bring the earnest money check if you're holding earnest money.
Doesn't it have to be
Otherwise,
wired?
your commission, it will be reduced by that amount, and if
And then they can't do a DA.
they can't do the DA, but then sometimes the commission is less than.
like here.
I was gonna say, it's less, so then you are responsible
Have a closing.
to pay that money.
Yes, we have to have all the money, so then we can distribute all the money. And so if we don't have all the money, because the earnest money is higher in your commission, like I can't pull $25,000 out of 22,500. So I don't have all of it, we can't complete the closing, and that's really awkward when it's the agent's fault that we can't finish the closing because we don't have the money.
And then like.
It's always
So
been
that,
friendly.
make sure everything is filed through command,
Right.
and they will send you something that your DA is ready and that your, earnest money check is in your mailbox, and so you can stop by and pick that up the morning of closing.
And nothing
Or the day
against,
before.
and nothing against Kim and them, but actually do look at the DA to make sure it's correct, because there could be things that change from contract to the point of DA that they don't know about. I mean, they can only work with what they've got. That's right.
So it's, they're working on what you entered, so.
And also check, also check, with your closing attorney, how they want to handle that check. Because if it's over $5,000, a lot of attorneys don't want to take that check. Especially if it's not something that we work with all the time. So always, and I will get it in writing, send an email, say, hey, my office is holding your earnest money, it's $10,000. We usually get a check 5 days before closing or however long. Can I just bring it the day of closing, or do you need it in advance? Some of them will want you to have that check sent over in advance. Some of them will only take a wire. So just make sure you're prepared, so you don't show up to closing with your earnest money check and they're like, oh, sorry, I can't take it.
Yeah, we
They
had,
will take it, but
Yeah.
not every attorney.
we actually had with the commercial side of hotel, a $60,000 earnest money on a property. And we knew we couldn't just walk in, I don't think Josh would have like that very much, with that. So we literally, we kept that in our head and we sent it 10 days out in advance. Actually, I think when I got convinced one of the best for wire that one.
And if it's a wire, both ways. If there are some, people that do not want to use earnest because it has that double verification, you have to give access through Plaid for them to go and debit your account for the money. And I've had some people that say, no, I don't want to give that additional access. I just want to wire. Just know that they have to pay the fee to the office for the wire, the incoming wire. And if they have to wire out, the office is also going to charge a fee. So
Yeah.
just
It's
understand that it's $30.
30, another 25,
30, okay.
so that's
So
$70.
just know,
If it's an amount, yeah.
and if the client's not paying it, you are.
Yeah, and one of us is not a big fan of doing wires. I'll just give you a heads up. And part of the reason why is you don't have quite the paperwork trail as when you have a check. She likes having that full paperwork trail. So that's what she's a little bit rusty on getting it out.
Okay, done, attorneys.
On the checks, if you get in a situation where you're closing in a different O'Kelly office and you get in, you're like, oh my God, I forgot to pick up the check. Just call us or call this office and we can deposit it. Any O'Kelly office can deposit for any others. So that's fine if like you get in a pickle. Obviously not with other firms. Okay, but if you're in a different office, like it's nice that we're across the hall
Yeah.
to be able to do that.
Yes, and within other firms, that one I was just referring to, they wouldn't accept a check and they had to have a wire. I called a different office and they're like, sure, we'll take your check. But then they pull the file and they're like, oh no, you're closing with that other office, so you have to check with the other office. So sometimes within the firm, it depends on the office.
Yeah, but for us, we communicate pretty well, so if another office says we won't take the check, I'll take your check and deposit it, and then I'm like taking the risk, because I know where to find you guys. Okay, so back on the escrow account, just a heads up, you're not prepaying 8 or 3 months, that's just how they calculate what your initial balance needs to be. You're gonna start paying into that escrow account with your first payment in November.
So they just want a little cushion.
Exactly.
Okay, all right, well, that works.
Yeah, so next section are the charges for the closing. We've got a post-closing fee, lets us take care of everything after the fact. The closing protection letters from the title insurance company to the lender, they protect them through the closing process. The $225 is for running and clearing the title exam. Flipping over to the second page for me. You'll see your lender's title insurance policy.
Can you explain me what title insurance is?
Yeah, of course, so it
Way
insures.
better this than I am.
It totally sucks.
Make $22,500 off of me and he has not done crap. Took me out, got me drunk and had me sign a contract.
And we all have our monthly methods.
Yeah, can you just explain to me what that is?
So you've got 2 title insurance policies here. One is for the lender, one is for you. So the lender's title insurance policy protects the lender for the value of the loan.
Okay.
Your title insurance policy protects you for the sale price value of the property, for that $750. So it protects your ownership of the property, or your title to it.
So as long as I own the home, what if I sell the home, what happens then?
Well, then your policy's no good, but it's not really your problem anymore anyway. That buyer will buy a title insurance policy. So it exists for your entire ownership of the property.
So if I sell it, do I get money back?
No, this is a one-time premium, so you're not gonna pay it every year. It's just a
Oh, okay.
one-time payment, and then your policy is good for your entirety of your ownership.
Well, question on this. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so like on that, I think it's important to point out that it doesn't increase. Like if somebody claimed your property, you know, and your house is worth 300 times or 300,000 more,
Mhm.
it only goes back to the original.
Yeah, so
It
it's.
doesn't increase as it doesn't increase as the property increases. So, yeah, so if your house was bought at like, say, 300,000 and you had a claim, you know, and your house is worth 500,000 now, you only get 300,000.
Yeah, you're insured for the 300.
I didn't know that.
I thought, I just assumed you were over the house.
No, it doesn't. That's important to know, because so, yeah,
Stuff in these.
Yeah. It's important to know that.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
if
and
you-
sometimes when people, like I had a guy who bought property, it was like a small house, and then he did some huge renovation that added to it, that like quadrupled the value of the house. It's good to get a new policy for that value. Most insurance companies won't just endorse it up. They want you to buy a whole new policy.
And the other point is, if you refinance the house, you have to get a new policy.
No, you do
Right.
not have to get a new owner's policy, but your new lender is gonna need a new policy, even if it's the same lender, it's still a new
So that's
loan
pretty
policy.
cost when you refinance.
Yeah, the lender's policy.
The lenders, yeah, okay.
Yeah. And a question that comes up a lot is why do I need two policies? Like if my loan is 500,000 and that's protecting the lender for 500, why wouldn't I just get a policy for 250 instead of paying for one for 750? The difference is who it protects. The lender's policy insures the lender and the lender alone. And some people say, okay, but if there's a lien, like can my lender just file a claim and get it fixed? No, your lender doesn't care about anything on the property other than being able to foreclose in their stated position. I mean, most first mortgages are gonna be in first position, which means if they foreclose, they get paid first. That's all they care about. So it's really about who's protected in what scenario.
And if you look, you know, the lender's coverage is 500,000 and the personal is 750,000, which is valuable versus the loan that they have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you also just said that after you sell, that policy is not valid anymore. I had understood that it kind of lasts forever. So let's say I sold a property and then the new buyer, they have their policy and then something happens that they file a claim, then that one would file a claim, like they could kind of go back in the chain.
Well, it protects your ownership, so if you don't own it anymore, there's really nothing to insure.
So the new buyer or the new owner can't go back to me and say, oh, there was something in the title that wasn't clear from when I bought from you.
Why would
They're
they
not
buy
gonna-
it someplace?
They would
Otherwise,
file-
that's why you have your own
They would,
policy.
yeah, they would file a claim on their policy.
Yeah.
And maybe that
that's-
insurance company goes to the other insurance company, and there's something between them,
Yeah.
but it's not necessarily like going back and
Because it's not
utilizing.
your
It's
fault.
only valid during your.
Yeah, it's not your problem if their title company didn't get a clear title rights. I mean, that's on that company.
And also, it's just limited, right? It's only limited to your ownership, like it doesn't go
Yeah.
back forever.
Well, it's ensuring your title, so if there was something that was on there before, like, let's say there's a lien that we didn't, or our examiner didn't catch, you still would be protected, because it's ensuring your ownership of it.
But only during your time, right?
Your ownership, as long as you own it.
So what's the difference between a limited and a full?
Well, are you talking about
Standard and
deeds?
enhanced, I think
Like-
he's talking about standard and enhanced policy.
Well, I think
Yeah.
you're talking about limited deed versus, like a limited warranty deed versus a general warranty deed.
No,
No.
in some states, it goes back from the very beginning, like our is only, limited warranty deed.
So, yeah, so the different deeds are what you can go back and sue the seller directly for. So the GAR contract has a limited warranty deed, which is the seller warranting title for their ownership,
Yeah.
exactly like you were saying.
Yeah.
A general warranty deed is warranting their ownership for all of time, but that's a different question than what I can go file a title insurance claim.
Okay,
And the reason that we don't really care whether it's a general warranty deed or a limited warranty deed on the contract is because your buyer's gonna buy title insurance. If there's an issue, they're gonna file a claim rather than trying to hunt the seller down, file the lawsuit, hope the seller has the funds to cover whatever the answer to the lawsuit is. That's a lot less efficient than just filing the claim. So not really a big risk. Okay, next section is the recording charges. The $50 lets us record the deed and the mortgage with the county. 50 cents lets us record everything online. 10 is standard in the loan transaction, it's like a tax. The 1,500 is a one-time tax on the loan, and the 750 is a one-time tax on the transfer of the property.
Taxed on it when you earn it, taxed on it when you save it, taxed on it when you spend it.
I know.
I'm sorry. Did we talk about the enhanced versus standard?
No, we did. So enhanced versus standard. So there's kind of two policies that your buyer can get in most scenarios. Some properties don't qualify for the enhanced policy, but everyone who's like buying a home to live in for the most part, it's gonna be the enhanced policy. So we default to the enhanced policy because it's like 8 coverages versus 30 for a small dollar increase. So you always want to encourage the enhanced. And one of the biggest things that the enhanced has that the basic does not have is the future coverage. So the way this insurance policy is set up is it covers anything that happens at the closing backwards. So if someone, if your buyer gets a lien against the property, they're not gonna cover that. That happened after the closing. That's your buyer's problem. They should not cut a lien against them. But the small future coverage that they'll do is like if your neighbor builds a driveway onto your property, builds a fence, they will help cover that. And, you hear the commercials on like lock, title lock all the time. The enhanced policy covers forgery issues, whereas the basic does not. So that's a big concern for a lot of people is, can someone just steal my house? Well, if they forge a deed, then they can try, but your enhanced policy is gonna cover you, so you don't need that title lock situation on the internet or on the radio
As
commercials.
an agent, I always ask, I know with them, it's always defaulted to an enhanced. But if you're not closing with them, always ask, because sometimes, especially if the buyer's tight on closing costs, they might drop it down to the standard, and there's no way you to know, there's no way for you to know unless you ask.
So when do you ask?
At the closing date,
Or when they send out the settlement statement, if you're getting that in advance, you could ask them.
You just said it's a small dollar amount.
just like $300.
Yeah, it's a few $100, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And, when we were talking about like dropping to the standard so that you can like cover the closing costs, some lenders will say to do that. Some lenders will just reach out to the attorney and say, hey, buyer wants standard, even though the buyer never said they wanted standard. And so some attorneys will just fix it and then nobody's knows any different. Our policy is if they want anything less than enhanced, they have to talk to either me or another attorney at the firm so we can explain it and decide whether they really want it. But beware of this kind of schmarmy lenders that'll just say to reducer, say, oh, they want to waive it without saying anything. Or other attorneys to like make it look cheaper, they'll say, hey, this is the cost, and agents say, well, how come you're charging so much more? We can't change the premium for title insurance, 1 penny in either direction at all. It's based off of the sales price and the loan amount. And so different title insurance companies have different premiums, but like if we're writing an Alliant policy versus another firm writing an Alliant policy with the exact same property, exact same numbers, those premiums will be identical. If there's a difference, then they're probably showing the standard policy versus us showing the enhanced policy. That's a good thing to be on the lookout for. Good point.
For title insurance, since I just learned that it only is valid for the original amount, there is never a way to upgrade it, very often.
You just combine them.
So right now, where our clients that bought pre-2020, they might have $200,000, $300,000 in equity. This would be a good thing to call and say, hey, this is the situation, just want to let you know that you might want to buy a new insurance policy.
Senior thing, I've been in my house for 22 years.
Yeah.
And to read the policies, I think there are some policies that include like a small inflation type increase, but not enough to keep up with the equity.
I was thinking of
Yeah.
like on the taxes or something, but yes.
So that would be a great touch.
But it
With your client say, hey, I was just thinking about you.
Didn't go up, that's good to know.
Mhm.
Okay, so yeah, you can buy a new one, at any
You
time.
have any title insurance policy for me? We'll talk about that
And now
afterwards.
you have it for next week.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, there we go, I like it.
Okay.
I like it. So next section, yes, we've got HOA charges. So you've got the $300 initiation fee that the seller did disclose on the community association disclosure.
Okay.
In the next section, this is the premium for your hazard or your homeowner's insurance. So you pay the full year up front, and then remember on the first page, you're creating the escrow account that you'll pay into monthly. So when this is due next year, your lender's gonna take care of that for you with your money out of your escrow.
Okay, and that's why there's a little bit of a cushion in case that like taxes go up or something, and then there's not enough, I'd be paying that.
That's exactly right.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yep. In the next section, you'll see that the seller agreed to pay $600 for a home warranty, but it was $625, so you're paying that $25 difference. And then, last thing, it looks like you got your gift funds there.
I don't need to talk about that.
So flipping over to the next page, the amount due from you.
So with the gift fund today, I know, I didn't want to really talk about that, but, so. Did they write a letter or something saying that I can give this money?
Yeah, so you
I
had
don't want to
a,
make sure that they said it was a gift and not going to take it back from me.
of course, yeah, so your lender had them sign a document saying that it was a gift, and they've shared that with us.
Okay, so they can't take it back?
It's not a loan.
It's not long.
It's not a loan.
That was my understanding, but you never know with the family.
That's a great point, right there.
Yeah,
A lot of times, that gift is actually a loan,
Alone.
right?
A lot
But
of
like
times.
that, mom and dad would say, yeah, I'll give you this money and then you pay me back later, when you get your bonus or whatever. Never, ever.
Disclose
Disclose
that. I have one of those right now.
And you be upfront with the lender and say, this is the situation, but, you don't want.
To say that at the table.
No, because,
And there's
yeah,
still a difference, like when we say it's a gift, not a loan, we mean there's not supposed to be any sort of paperwork collateralizing the property.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be a loan that gets perfected, as we would say, like a personal loan, that's a little bit different. The reason that the lender cares is they don't want some other security deed that threatens how much money they'll get if they have to foreclose. So that's why we're so specific about gift versus loan, but you're not like breaking the law if they're gonna pay them back.
Well, but I think they do consider it as part of their debt to income ratio. So if you say, oh yeah, I'm gonna pay them back.
it would.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
how much are you gonna pay? Oh, I'm gonna pay them back $200 a month.
Yeah, $1,000.
Then they're gonna throw it into their debt to
Right.
income ratio. And I don't know.
So if the.
So, have a great
If
relationship.
it's a gift, just remember, it's a gift.
Or just have a great relationship with your lender and, have some sort of hint and saying,
Mommy and daddy might be helping out, but.
so they're giving you.
That's
hey,
more
wait,
what my
wait.
situation is.
Yeah,
So then the total amount due from you is the 158, 114.96. Did you wire that to us?
Well, I think it was something called an ACH.
Nothing, it was made over this board.
This one last year.
I'm on your side.
Or 90s. Did this, and that's why I bring that up.
Okay, so this is.
And I heard this really well.
Yeah, because it's back.
This, it does happen.
It does
That's why I want to bring it up, and we'll go through all the scenarios.
Make sure that you're instructing your buyers to send what's called a same day wire. Because there are banks, and I think Denise used this bank, where they will call it a 3-day wire, and she totally sent it 3 days ahead of time. So like, she knew the word wire, she said, okay, a 3-day wire is $10, a same day wire is $30, $35, I'll just do a 3-day wire. And sent it, and because she just didn't know the difference, and, we can say what different banks do, but we can't know like all the banks and who uses what and whatnot. So make sure you say same day wire, because a 3-day wire is actually an ACH. And that's problematic because the good funds law in Georgia says that anything over $5,000 has to be usable money in the attorney's account on the day of closing. So obviously 158,000 is well over 5,000. An ACH can get clawed back, so it's not usable funds in our account. So we couldn't use that money at all. And she had to like step out, call the lender, get a gift from, I think, her mom.
Yeah, that was what I wanted to give her. Oh, you can.
Yeah.
And the attorney was there, actually. I was not the attorney.
I was there.
The banker. The lender was there and he was on one line with the bank and she was on the other and it was just haywire.
And it was a problem for her because she called and said, okay, I want to, claw back my ACH and then it'll be in my account and I'll send the wire. And they told her it was gonna be like 60 days or something absurdly long.
Back in her account.
Yeah, so for her to be able to get that money back, to send it to us correctly was just straight up not an option at all. So she was very lucky that there was someone who could get the funds, that the lender hopped on it and made all that happen, and we still closed the same day.
Same day, I mean, you were like out, it's like a
But it's
6, 7.
still closed same day, so it worked out, but it was a huge piece of stress
And
for this buyer that she didn't need.
First time young home buyer and, everything had gone so well up to that point. And then she was like, just totally stressed out, but actually we pulled it all together and we made it. So that's what we were talking about that earlier. I wanted to bring that up. David would definitely have advised me. He would probably have picked me up that morning, driven me to the bank and said, make a wire. Yeah. So,
Yeah, no, so actually what I do is, we normally, especially if you're using Onward, is you get the settlement statement a day or two before. I always tell the client, do the wire transfer the day before. So, because you don't know, especially if it's at the end of the month, the Fed can be slower getting things through. There's no specific commitment on what time something will go. I've seen it go in 15 minutes and I've seen it go in 4 hours, before. So really the safest thing to do, just do it the physical day before that. And that way you walk into closing, if something like I had someone say, well, what if it blows up, the whole deal? And I was like, well, number one, it's not going to. Number two, it's just sitting in the attorney's trust account. They can wire back. The other thing that I do is I always ask them to wire about $500 more than what's required in it in case there's small adjustments that occur. And once again, the attorney can just wire back or just cut a check at closing. I'm more than happy to do that.
Especially nowadays that most people
Don't have a check.
don't have a checkbook.
Right.
Because before you could say, just bring your checkbook.
It's less than $5,000.
If it's less than 5,000, they can do that. But most people don't have checkbooks.
Oh, yeah, somebody was listening to me one time, it was $220 differential, and they had to go up to, back when it was SunTrust, and go get a bank check.
Yeah.
For it. I've told client, it's just part of our standard operating procedure, yeah. Sure enough, they didn't do it, and he had to sit on his laptop at the closing attorney's office and wire the funds out.
No,
It just creates extra stuff.
Yeah,
You don't-
it's just, right.
you just don't-
you don't need it that day.
Right, it just has.
Another great thing about O'Kelly and Sorhan is if you have never used their portal to send money to them, that is something that can be done the day of closing. They're like, oh, there's $220 that I need to pay in. They can just log into the portal and send the money right there and it'll be done. Also for earnest money, if they're holding earnest money, they can do that. The question I have for
Okay, I
that,
didn't know that.
let's say, yeah.
So we have a portal?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an
I never
ACH
did.
account.
It's very easy.
I didn't do that.
And I've had.
You have 2 weeks worth of tests now.
Earnest money was over 5,000, because that will only take 5,000
Right.
at a time.
Yes, but if it's like 10,000, you can send to 5,000.
To
It
5,000.
might be up to 10,000. I think it might be, is it 5?
I think it's 5.
Okay, but yes, and then there's daily limits. I think our daily limit is 25,000. So if it's a $30,000 earnest money, you'd have to do 5 transactions on day 1 and then 1 transaction on day 2. So probably if it's a lot of money, just wire it is easier,
Yeah.
but don't think, oh, it's 7,000, they won't let me send it, just do two batches.
So I've used that when I had the situation where the buyer didn't want to use earnest because they didn't want to give the additional. Then I said, okay, let's switch it over. And it was like a Sunday, earnest money was due that day. So we just agreed that to change the holder to O'Kelly and Sorhan, they use the portal and
Does the
I
portal
was on your client.
Just go, okay, so I says send earnest money.
I've got to do that.
I never did that.
Yeah, But again, that's only if, like, for your actual funds to close, if it's under $5,000. So like, Allison can go on our portal and send $158,000, even if she spread it out over 10
It
days.
was like 220.
Yeah,
Let's say I had only
for
wired,
the difference due in
Yeah.
closing, not to use instead of flash.
so if I had only wired 155, I'd be.
Like if
able to
they didn't
wire
have their check.
It's still easier to send $500.
Yeah, that's a good deal.
So scenario,
Sorry, I'm gonna give an example on something. So you just made a comment, earnest money was due on Sunday. That statement there. When you're writing a contract, and I've only once had somebody kick it up, and this has to do with due diligence. Write a stipulation there that says if due diligence ends on a federal holiday or weekend day, then due diligence shall continue and extend until 5 PM the next business day. That way, you're not at 10:45 on a Saturday night when you're at someone's house for dinner or whatever, negotiating a due diligence.
and also write that in, because, it says 11:59.
Yeah, I always put
Don't.
contingencies.
I don't
at
want
8 p.m.
anybody bothering me at 11 o'clock at night after I had 2 glasses.
Or having that sleep.
Or.
Yeah. Nine, I mean, my gosh, say that due diligence ends at 5 o'clock or that it ends at 7 o'clock. but
Wait,
don't.
just if you can repeat that, you always write that in, you said?
Yes.
Can you repeat what you write? Sorry.
All contingencies and at 8
You just
p.m.
always say that.
Yeah, you can say that now on due
You
diligence,
have-
to avoid the weekend discussion. Yeah, because I just don't want to deal with it, like, imagine last Saturday, I'm sitting in Durham here. And I've got a due diligence ending at 5 o'clock on, and I'm sitting in the stadium. So what I always do is I just write if due diligence ends on a weekend day or federal holiday, then due diligence shall continue and extend until 5 PM the next business day. Because I agree with the 11:59.
Don't.
So I just say it goes till 5 PM that coming Monday.
Yeah.
Like this past Labor Day weekend.
Because this was a holiday.
The holiday, we're going to Tuesday.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, I know, like on our standard commercial forms, they already have that clause in there, so I was does the residential not have that?
No,
No.
So everything ends at 11:59 on
yeah.
the day.
No, I mean, as far as like holidays and stuff.
No.
No, the only thing that auto extends is closing date.
Okay.
And
That
if you're-
will auto extend.
Yeah, and if you're dumb enough to write a closing date on Saturday or something, you should be right contract.
Well, sometimes what we do is like,
You don't want to talk to Suzanne then? Because I do it all freaking time. I just feel like, oh, September 30th,
That's not like a day.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Get the second, you did this again.
If you were represented buyer, I would be writing you back saying, excuse me, did you realize this closing date falls on a Sunday? Could you resend this?
No, and the thing is, if I'm the buyer,
I would.
I have never had the listing agent question me on the day.
Well,
They just accept it.
it's a good thing we haven't worked together in that capacity.
well, sometimes what does happen, instead of like the weekend day, like if 4th of July is on a Sunday, and so the day of observance is Monday the 5th, nobody's thinking July 5th
Right.
is a holiday, except for like it is, and we're all closed on July 5th, and July 4th is the weekend. So that happens more so than the weekend days. But yeah, you can't obligate the attorney to show up on a non-working day.
So scenario 2 would be instead of, oh, I sent that ACH would be, yes, I wired the money yesterday. And I wired, David told me wire about $500 extra, so I sent like 163. So could I see that it is the 158, as he said it may change? How do I get that money back?
That was great advice from David.
Thank you so much. for that.
We did write that on.
Yeah.
He's so good. We'll give that money back to you. We can cut you a check or we can send you a wire. Which one do you prefer?
I just said, check.
You got it? Okay, great.
I could just give my 2 cents.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to give any of the money back. Because of the personal opinion,
But, this newer generation of humans, but they like to do everything on their phones, right?
Yes.
And so they're like, we get phone calls all the time where people are like, I'm on my phone and I'm trying to do the wire, but I don't know what to click on, and and it's just, I don't.
Because you know the website for every
I don't
single.
know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's really frustrating. It's just so much easier to advise them to just go into a bank and send their wire.
I always love
But
I did this awesome.
But they just don't. found out is like Wells Fargo and other banks as well, they'll only let you send like up to 25,000 a day, so you gotta send 60.
Like from on the online.
From your phone.
Yeah.
And so you have to either have to go in or you have to
Or you
send
have
it
to file them, yeah.
days and days and days of doing it from your phone, which is like ridiculous. So just encourage them to try to just physically go to the venue.
Yeah, and some banks you have to make an appointment to go. So encourage them to call their bank to set up an appointment or see if they can just waltz on in before they go too. Because if they wait until the morning of and then their bank says you need an appointment and our next one is on Friday, well, this is Tuesday, that's a problem.
Or you blame gun and say,
We don't take,
I don't want anybody else's money.
we don't take cash, it doesn't work,
And literally clients will,
just to
this
be
is,
clear.
this is back in the days of the attorney that was here before. Ashley, is that somebody walked in with a briefcase of $15,000 of cash.
Yeah, we can't take that.
I had a guy.
We're not gonna launder your money for you.
Closing, because he wanted us to give him like $80,000 of cash at his.
Yeah. It doesn't.
And we
Yeah,
don't-
you bring a boat and 3 goats, they'll do that every day.
If that's what the seller wants. The other thing that can happen with a wire, you know, we talked about sellers, the money needs to go to the seller. Opposite's true for the buyer, the money needs to come from the buyer. So typically I've looked to see if we have the wire, Lindsay's looked to see if we have the wire, and so I'm gonna say, we got your wire for 163, it's a little bit over, you wanna check, or, you know, whatever, if I've seen it. But what I'm looking for is really this dollar amount, and then Allison's name and the property address. So if she sent it from A.B. Edwards Real Estate and she sent 163 and didn't put the property address, I'm not finding it when I search for it. So that's important to tell your clients to send it from that account, but if they send it from somewhere else, let us know that they sent it, tell us the amount and the name that they sent it from, so that we don't have that brief panic moment, because if you sent me 160,000 and I'm saying you don't have it, that's because I'm not seeing all of the metrics that we use to search.
And the payments in a better account.
That's what I'm panic moment when I see that, because I'm gonna have to go to your bank to, yeah, you guys okay with her sending money from that account?
yeah.
And a lot of times they have to, a lot of times they're not.
I'm gonna say, because like, when I bought my place, I sent it from my corporate account. Now I'm a LLC, a single proprietor
But your
LLC.
lender probably had already sourced that and told us that that's okay.
Okay,
And
Yeah.
it's.
I don't even remember, it's been a long time.
Oh, yeah.
And if it was a cash transaction, then I would have said, hey, are you the only member of this company? You would have said, yes, we would have put together our own
Yeah.
source of funds and signed off on it. So it's not that there's no scenario in which it works out. But you do want to know that that's the case. We do want to make sure that the lender is okay with it. And I don't want to cause that moment of panic when I say, I don't see your wire, when they sent it the correct way 2 days ago, it's just different name, different amount.
Yeah.
So just kind of be mindful of that.
Okay, we got about 10 minutes left.
All right, quick, run through the seller side. Fast and please, my friend. You're on the left column, right column is credit back. Credit for the sales price of the property. You're giving the buyer that seller credit. And then also you've already received your option money, so we're taking that out of the total amount due from you.
I don't agree with that, because that money was fine.
Well, your option money, what the contract said is that it would be included at closing, which means that the buyer does get credit for it. So you got this money directly, but you only agreed to pay this.
This money I already spent. I won't use it back.
Well, I'm not taking it back, you're just not getting it again. It's okay that you spent it, that money did go directly to you, but the way the contract was set up was that the buyer was gonna get credit for it. If the contract had been set up differently, then that might have been a different story, but the way
So
you're.
what was the point of doing that, if you're gonna give us money to the
Well, I'm not taking it away, you just don't get it twice.
So you get, but this is a debit,
Correct,
and
so.
so credit was you.
Right,
I don't-
so she only owes you $749, she's already giving you one of the $750. Next section.
And I swear to God, I've heard so many times, whatever.
You're like, if you don't sign, you don't get it, okay?
Math, but, okay.
I think either, I feel that. So prorations, you're getting credit for things that you've already paid with the buyer one. So rest of the year's county taxes, rest of the year's HOA, rest of the year solid waste. And then with this year's tax bill, you're paying next year's solid waste, so she's giving that back to you as well. Next section, we've got the commissions for the agents.
Thank you.
You should really say thank you. It's unanimous.
Told you to send 500 extra, remember?
Yeah, that's right. He did our dinner. He's a great agent.
You've been blessed.
On the second page, we've got the payoff and proceeds handling and delivery fee. Here, the $25 recording fee, when we ran title and clear title, we do a name search. And so there was someone with the same name as you that did have a lien against them. We verified that it's not you, but we're just gonna have you sign a document and report it so that future examiners know that it's not your lien. In the next section, you'll see the payoff for your current mortgage.
So I checked my balance this morning and my payout is only $375.
Yeah. Well, that happens. So when you look at your outstanding principal balance, that does not include all the interest that you've accrued with the last payment that you made, interest accrued in arrears. So I will tell you too, that a lot of times our payoffs are good through several days after closing. Many things lenders don't want to regenerate payoff after payoff, as closings can move often. So if there's any additional interest that you've paid but really don't owe, the bank has to give that back to you. So they'll send that directly to you about 30 days after closing, but it's not going to be that total difference again, because all the interest that accrued since your last payment.
And can I have a copy of that?
Yeah, of course. I'll get that printed for you, not a problem. Do you have an escrow account with this lender where they pay your taxes and insurance?
No, I think that's.
You pay your taxes yourself?
I'm sorry.
You do? I think that's a
I'll have 3 minutes and we'll question that statement.
You can check online.
So then you'll see the payoff for your line of credit that you've got.
Oh, that Home Depot thing?
No, so this is the second mortgage that you've taken out with your lender. It doesn't work like a credit card, but you have your total amount due and then you can use it, pay it back, use it again, pay it back. So
But I
this
can
is,
use it like fix up my next house.
no, we're gonna close it out after this closing, so you don't have access to it anymore. You didn't use it yesterday, did you?
Moving on.
Line of credit, again, so you can make draws and pay it back, make draws,
It's
pay
a
it back.
revolver.
We have to get the, what?
It's a revolver.
Oh, yeah, exactly, it's a revolving line of credit, precisely. So what we have to get that payoff like within 48 hours of closing. So sometimes that does create a little bit of stress because we order it, I like to order it in the beginning and see what it is and then either confirm or get the update a little bit close to closing. If they turn it around in 2 hours and then we're asking for it the day before closing and they just decide it's gonna take 3 days, sometimes we do have to call the seller and say, hey, we need to get you on the phone so we can confirm that outstanding balance. So just know that if it's a line of credit, it's not because the attorney just willy-nilly didn't do their job up until the last day. It's that because the seller could have utilized that since we originally ordered it, we have to have that payoff, very recent. And I did have a closing where it was a zero balance or like a $10 balance, something. And she says, well, actually, I used this yesterday to pull out the down payment to buy my new house. So thank goodness she was honest and she didn't do anything wrong, but thank goodness she was honest because we had gotten it within 48 hours, but she used it 24 hours in advance. So they're also confirming I have in fact not used my line of credit, anything extra, because that's a real problem. If they do, I mean, it's fine that she used it. We got the payoff, we updated the numbers and it worked out, but because that lender was quick getting it to us and that seller was honest. So just be mindful of that, because it was like $200,000. I was like, oh, thank you so much for your honesty. Next section are the HOA charges. So you currently have a $500 balance due to the HOA. They charge $125 for that closing letter. For a letter. I know that's really expensive. We're not in charge of the HOA. I'm not gonna tell you you're wrong, but we're kind of stuck with it. And honestly, that's kind of a cheaper letter. I've seen $500 and $600. Do it. Next section. Your portion of the initiation fee.
Why am I thinking current?
Because on the community association disclosure, that's part of your contract, there was a paragraph where you filled out how much she was gonna be obligated to pay. And that was, you filled in $300. That document says anything that you under disclose is your responsibility to
But my
pay.
next door neighbor is the treasurer and she told me it was figured out.
It could be that she had outdated information. It could be that the management company
Hey, and this is exactly why I don't go to closing.
This happened, so. It could be that the management company adds an additional.
Thank you. No, apparently, you said you paid bills on time and I paid you back over here. You haven't even paid it. You still owe it and I'm paying. So don't look at me.
What the HOA letter said. Well, do you have the pool key with you? Do you know where your pool key is? So what the HOA letter that we have to follow said is that if the seller is not giving the buyer the pool key at closing, we do have to charge the seller the $25.
That is, as a listing agent, that is one of the things you really have to stress on. Is make sure the seller understands that whatever they put in that paragraph is what the buyer will be responsible for, and anything over it will be on their side. And I always make sure I send it in writing. I talk to them about it when we're reviewing the community association disclosure, when they have to fill it out. And then I follow up with an email and tell them, remember, check with the HOA on this. Because, and sometimes the HOA will give them the wrong information, but that's on them. That's something that they have the responsibility to go do. HOAs do not are realtors, so they will most likely not talk to you. Sometimes I've been able to go in the MLS and pull community association disclosures from the same subdivision or whatever, and that kind of gives us an idea. Current, that kind of gives you an idea, but still, if you're unsure, I always tell them just add a couple $100. And it doesn't matter how much it says there, they're gonna charge whatever they're gonna charge. But at least on the seller side, you're covering your seller for whatever the cost might be.
Now, padding it is a great idea because there's no penalty for over disclosing. The only time that comes into play as a penalty is if you over disclose so much, like if you're at $20,000, and like a buyer might say, whoa, I'm not gonna pay $20,000. So don't scare a buyer, but that's literally the only downside to padding it. But don't ever write it in and fill it out for your client, or say, hey,
Do not.
I think it's $1,000. So I would never advise, the only time I would really advise is they put in $500, like, hey, are you sure, did you call this company? Did you call the HOA? Did you call the management company? Do you maybe wanna pad that a little? Never let them put 0, always put something, but I wouldn't say, oh, I don't think it's 1,500, it's 1,000. No, because if it is 1,500, you're absolutely gonna cover that $500.
Okay, I have a real live question, real live, real time.
Good question.
A real live, real time question.
Current
Right now. Seller property disclosure, I mean CAD, Community Association disclosure, my sellers are in India. 2 brothers, so the HOA is $350 a year. The initiate, so that's line 3 on CAD. On line 5, the initiation, transfer, blah, 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 fees are $250. It used to be that, and the contract, I guess, has changed, so there was a line and that the buyer would not pay, the seller would not pay more than. Or the buyer.
It wasn't a line that I've been doing.
It was, so there was a total, so do you put the total of the $350 and the $250 on that shall not pay more than?
No, the $350, you're saying is like their annual assessment, that's not relevant to paragraph 5.
Paragraph 5.
So it would be the $250.
The $250.
But
Okay.
my $250 feels low, so like, did they call the HOA and the management company?
So you did,
Okay, well then,
so then here's the
but
next one.
there's no risk to you putting 600 in that blank. Because no buyer is gonna
Right,
not
and
buy.
that's what I recommended. So here's the next question. We don't touch a CAD, right? We do not touch CAD. It is illegal to touch CAD, right? So
Is that-
if, well, no.
It's just-
It's not
Well,
about getting
back to you. So if it's so hard to get these people to make that correction and you send it to them twice and told them specifically that it's because you don't want to be under. Could you consider the box and then have them initial that box, or you can have them again, send it again and have them put 600 in the
I would
box?
have them put 600, but if it's their money. And so if they wanna leave it
At
at 250 and you've told them, hey, it's probably best to pad this a little
Yeah.
bit, cause if it ends up being $500,
Yeah.
you're gonna pay the 250 that you didn't disclose, and they don't wanna change it, that's not really your problem.
But is it wrong to put the 600 and then have them initial it?
As long as it's before the,
More than initial,
Yeah.
because they, some of them, they.
I know you she's talking about.
I mean, we've said.
So my problem with that is if you've put in the 600 and then you have them initial it and really it ends up being $1,000, they're gonna look at you and say, why did you put 600?
Even though they have correspondence that I sent them that they need to put 600 in the box.
But if it's 1,000, now you've come up with the 600, so they're gonna look to you for that extra 400. So I think, I mean, like, is there a legal reason you can't do that? No, you can do that, but I think you might be opening yourself up to
$1,000,
risk.
I think I'd rather spend 400 than go back to it again.
Fair enough. I know who you're talking about, so I get it.
I really do, I think.
What I do is I give it, if somebody.
I have
sends
those
them
numbers
this
together.
Initiation thing, I'll go back to 3 times, and say, we need this number. If they haven't done it in 3 tries, then it's on them.
I'm pretty sure that's 6.
Yeah,
Right.
if you get,
And so
if you have 3
it's
shots.
your own seller that won't fill it out.
But when they filled it out, they put 250 and I wanted them to pad it.
But to me, I would just say, I tried a bunch of times to tell you, and then if it ends up being 6, they'll pay the
So just
350.
leave it at 250 and 350. HOA do line 3 and line 5, 350,
If you told them, I think that you should pad it, and you told it multiple times and they don't wanna pad it,
And one last email and say, I just want you to understand that this number on paragraph whatever is what you would be what the buyer is responsible to pay for initiation fee, transfer fee, anything else in the contract. If it's more, you will be responsible for paying that difference. Would you like to amend this, like, fill it out? Have you gone live? Like, is it under
Yeah,
contract and
you're
stuff?
It's live, but the disclosure's not posted.
Okay.
Because, and for people that have asked for them, I've said, you know, we're just in a different time zone, and so we're working on that right now.
Okay, so I would just say that, could you say that from, are
They're
they
in
from
India, they are in India right now.
that you make sure you get that in writing?
Yes,
And then, because then when you come to this situation and closing, you're saying, remember this email?
yeah,
only 7
Yeah.
emails I'm sending,
Yeah.
not just one that could get lost. Yeah,
okay.
And then on
And
that
for
same
one more
note,
email,
if something changes during the time that you go under contract or live, let's say the community, the HOA decides to come up with a special assessment and you're already marketing the property, or even you're under contract, you always update that disclosure and let the buyers know, like either upload it or just say, hey, we just got this information from the HOA, here's a new community association disclosure, and have everybody agree to incorporate that new one into
but they
the,
don't have to incorporate it,
what?
they don't have to agree to incorporate it.
well, you have to update the disclosure and send it in, but as far as the transfer and initiation fee, what the CAD says is even if this is updated later, it doesn't matter what when you're looking at who's paying what, it was the initial CAD.
What
That's
about
what I
a
meant.
special assessment?
So those work a little bit differently. It depends on whether it was already like in place or if it was just under consideration and whether it was disclosed. It's not quite as strict as the transfer initiation. Yeah, but that is the section of the CAD that does have the maximum amount that the buyer will pay is the special assessment section. So that could be what you're thinking.
Okay, maybe that is what I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
It's slow here.
Jumping into the next section for you here, there looks like there was a tax payment, there was a lien, so we're taking care of that. Last year's taxes hadn't been paid, so we're collecting that from you as well. there's a small water bill due to the county, so if you have auto pay set up, you don't need to send in the payment, we're telling you. So, and that does happen, water bills do take a long time to come in, so it's not that we can just go check and it be good to go. Typically, you know, and what I tell people is they're never gonna collect it twice. So whichever one hits second will get bounced back to the sender. So if your payment, they try to apply second, they'll send it directly to you. If they try to apply ours second, they'll send it back to us, we'll turn around and cut you a check. So you're not gonna be out that money twice. If you have someone who's like, I just absolutely on principle refuse to accept that, what I would suggest is as long as this water bill is not due like tomorrow, then I would say, we'll go ahead and order an update. We're gonna keep everything as is. But if I get an update by Friday saying that it's a zero balance, then we'll go ahead and cut you that check and we'll go order that now. And that typically makes people comfortable enough, because that's really our kind of two options there. This is the home warranty that you agreed to pay in the contract. And then this is the check to the window company that you agreed to pay. This is this year's tax bill. Okay, so you're paying the full year, but remember, you're getting credit for the rest of the year on the first page. Remember? The
last line,
the tax bill.
just pay the taxes in 2 years.
Yeah, she doesn't know where you are.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Sorry, I have some fires actually put out from other folks.
But she pays all her bills on time, don't worry.
Always.
Even the water bill.
They should pay everything.
And so the amount due to you is the $296, $849.48.
So I read somewhere instructions.
That's where we met at the party table.
On the part of it seems like.
That's why like 20 grand.
We
No,
do
can't
have
find the burden.
directly to you, so we can wire all that money to you, and then you can turn around and send it to them. The only other option I have is if you want, what I can do is I can wire you the $276, and then I can cut you a check for the $20,000, and then what you do with that check is totally up to you. But I do have to send all the proceeds to your. Sure.
Let's do that.
Okay, no problem. And I'll probably have her sign a disbursement authorization saying she wants the $276 wired and the $20,000 cut in a check.
And
So
that
that's-
Vito should not show up.
Yes, please do not bring your problems.
So there was a lot of jest and a lot of fun in this, but with every objection that we raise, I hope we all worked, I know I worked, I mean, I went 2 or 3 little tidbits
It was
today.
real
And we've seen
Yeah.
all of it in real life, maybe not all at the same time,
Yeah,
but all of it.
most people aren't quite as conscious, but,
What I have as far as the buyer money that I didn't mention, that is hilarious to me, but the amount of times I've had it, I guess it's worth mentioning, is they'll look at me and say, wait a minute, you didn't go pull that out of my account.
oh.
No, we don't have access to everyone's bank account to go pluck the money.
I had
I
that,
think we was where the guy yelled at me. It wasn't your client, it was the other side. It was like a parking lot. It was you or Louise, but y'all were both there. And he was like in the car yelling at me because I didn't go pull the money. It wasn't
And
y'all's
you didn't
side.
kill him?
It wasn't, no, it wasn't y'all's client. Y'all were on the other side.
But Louis didn't kill him because he would go, something like that.
You like me to say this?
I had some people that thought that, and I drove there tonight.
Maybe I didn't tell you.
So they think that like, you can go into their account, they'll just.
Yes,
And
and
plug
you
the
get
money
in this and you know.
You have to be able to own a house.
It is, it's a part talking about it.
Have you ever picked it up on the computer?
Maybe,
Yeah, I remember that closely.
but yeah, he was like legit angry at me because I didn't go get the money myself. And I was like, sorry.
Yes, I remember that, and then so that, yeah.
That's $413,000.
And it's not my account, I'm like, it's our data teacher's account, like, it's not my account, with me today, I'm closing on it, yeah.
That's what you do in the morning, but we're not doing things for money and.
My day. And I had a real smart young guy come in and, you know, we send out the wiring instructions and we say, please call to verify these instructions before you use them. He thought that we were gonna call him to confirm the wire transfer and plug it out of his account. And he had like multiple degrees, was like tech savvy,
You know,
Well,
what knowledge and common sense would you do?
and another great point, that we just mentioned is when you have the buyer, and you are providing the wiring instructions, first of all, try to avoid at any cost getting involved in the wire instructions deal, direct them directly to them. But do always advise them to call them ahead of time, and I do say, call this number. I text them the number and say, call this number I just texted you, because then I make sure that it is the right number. And then they call when you're in the bank, call when you're in the bank. And sometimes I have found lately have been very good that they actually require to call and verify the wiring instructions. But that sounds, take yourself out of the middle of that. And make sure that you advise your clients to call and verify that they're sending the money to where they need to go.
And we're kind of annoying about that, meaning agents will ask us and I'm like, really, we should send them directly to your client. So I will push back on it. I'm not gonna flat out refuse, but I do try to push back because there's no reason for y'all to have liability that we already have. Cause like if I send them to you correctly and then you send them to your client, just like a naked email, not encrypted or anything, and they get like hacked in the middle and they wire it to a fraudster, you're on the hook for that, not me, because I did my job correctly, sending them correctly to you. So just be careful and know that we're not trying to be annoying or make your life hard. We're trying to protect you again.
Well, when I was new, I actually sent my clients' personal information to their phone, their social security number and everything over to a Kelly's had her at the time, and she's like, why did you do this to me?
The other thing that I think we talked about, this comes up on my end quite a bit, is on the buyer side, when the loan is under the husband, for example, right? The husband's the one that has the income, he's the one that's qualifying, but then they want the house to be in, right, in, as joint tenants. So always ask that question when you're going through the process with your buyer, like how do you want to hold title once you buy this house? And sometimes you can go with the lender can actually list the spouse or whoever it is as a non-borrowing buyer.
Non-borrowing buyer.
And it's easier that way in a sense, but just know that then that person has to sign every piece of the contract, every document, everything. It's just like as if they were a true buyer.
They are a true buyer. They're just not a borrower.
But what I would do is whoever is the person being the borrower, I would ask that question to them independently, not with the couple together.
Yes.
Because there may be some mechanics sitting behind it that can cause a problem.
And that's exactly why I'm not gonna ask at the table. Like if the husband's the only one signing stuff and he brings his wife, I'm not gonna say, oh, did you wanna be on title? Because that's really none of my business, right? The contract and the loan all tell me one thing.
Yeah, if that does need to occur when they do the paperwork behind it, that needs to be told to them before walking into court.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the other way to do it is the closing attorney can do
Trailing.
a trailing deed. So basically at closing, the borrowing spouse or whoever's on all the paperwork, they sign everything and then they sign a quitclaim deed giving title to them and the other person at the same time. Now there's a fee the attorney will charge at that point to do that paperwork. If you do it the other way, there's no fee because it's built into the contract, into
It's
the.
just depending on whether the one
It's just-
allow that.
Right, and you know, the situation, sometimes you don't find out until the very last minute and the training deed is something.
And it's not- Yeah,
It's
it's,
$100 or something.
well, we
$25.
don't charge the fee if it's at the table, we just charge recording. If in a month your client wants to add their wife, we'll charge our $175 plus recording, but if it's at the closing, it's just what the county charges us, which is $25 to $30, depending on the county. So it's a pretty nominal fee, it's very easy to do, but be careful when you're asking them how they want the property to be deeded, because if they're saying, I wanna add my fiance, we can't just do that without lender approval. We can only add a spouse or an adult child, not a parent, an adult child. So that only goes one direction. So fiance is not close enough to spouse or parent, you know, those kind of things, we have to ask the lender if they'll approve it. Sometimes the lender says, yeah, we don't care at all. Sometimes they say, no, we can't do that. So don't promise them that. And the other one I see come up when, they're asked like, how do you want it titled? So I want to own it in my LLC name. I'm getting a loan as a primary residence, but then I want my LLC to be the owner. Most lenders are not gonna allow that at the table, or like putting it in a trust. And if they need to talk to their lender about that, if they wanna do it, because I don't mind doing the deed, I just need lender approval, same cost, super easy for me to do. I just won't do it without the lender giving me the okay on it. And sometimes I've had it where the buyer has asked their loan officer, and the loan officer said, yeah, no problem, we can totally do that. But then the person who actually has authority to make that decision at the lender's office says, no, we're not doing that. I don't know why they told us that. So just make sure that they've kind of done their due diligence, maybe ask us before they get to the table, so we can ask the party who actually has control over that. And if they say no, then your buyer is not walking in with incorrect expectations.
My dementia doctor's gonna be really happy I got my. So I'm being.
Better to say a sponsor.
Well,
Yeah.
they're naturally not.
So we laugh, but a capacity issue is a real problem.
Yeah.
And like, if there's an
I've
existing.
never had to deal with, I mean, not with the last minute, we've had to deal with it during the course of it, and, I mean, the client, the son, can't, or the mother, they
Yeah.
can't do it all correct.
Yeah,
And that was celebrating with your clients, before the potential closing. Cause if you're under the influence of alcohol and your attorney know that, then you can't legally sign these documents.
Right, you have to have capacity.
Right,
to be
that's
able
why
to-
I pick people up at 9 in the morning.
That's why you.
I'm serious, I did that,
Early closing.
I did not trust him not to be,
That's
not
not
for
that's what time is those?
9 o'clock. I'm not kidding, it's 9 in the morning, and I didn't trust him
To
to
not be drunk.
not already be drinking, and it was a $750,000 house at the time.
Like me.
Yeah, but that's just reduced to that.
Yeah,
So-
Well, you're getting the morning. Thank you, guys.
So I have a heart to give you a hard time.
Sorry, David, I know you're really a very good agent and very successful, but I had to play.
No, she took way too much, joy out of the, I noticed how excited she
It
was.
was so much.
Yeah, she paid people to do that.
Not there.
That was very good.
Now, that's good.
That's fine.